Good evening, everybody who are watching America First. My name is Nicholas J. Fuentes. We have a great show for you tonight. Very excited to be back here with you tonight on Tuesday. We have a lot to talk about tonight, lots to get into, big show, and there's so much to catch up on. So much has happened this weekend to discuss. Our featured story, we're going to talk all about the Charlie Kirk Memorial on Sunday. And there's a lot to say about it. You all saw it, I'm sure. That was their intention. It was a giant spectacle. And I'm going to be very critical about it tonight, about the message, about the optics of it. And I want to do it in a respectful way. I want to do it with respect to Charlie Kirk, a man who has passed, his family, his friends, who I'm sure are grieving. But this is politics, and this is a big part of politics. And by that I mean we see over and over and over, time and time again, sentiment, emotions, crisis. These are the extraordinary circumstances that politicians traffic in. We all have a sense of identity, and we all have an intentional idea of what we support and our values and our beliefs. We all think we know who we are and what we're about until a catastrophe happens, until a crisis happens. And then everybody's emotions skyrocket and sentiment is cranked up. And whereas ordinarily we think we know who we are and we think we know what we're about and what we support and what we believe in, it is in extraordinary times when we tend to get dragged along into things that maybe ordinarily we wouldn't support and maybe ordinarily we wouldn't go with. And that is because when tragedies and catastrophes happen, when fear, panic, and other emotions come in, it makes us influenceable. It makes us easy to manipulate. And it makes us easy to manipulate because certain things are raised up which are beyond reproach, which people believe are beyond criticism. Some things are off limits and protected. And that's how that works. And so the reason I say all this and the reason I lay that out, maybe that sounds strange, I think this is one of these moments. And we talk a lot on the show about false flags, about things like 9/11, about October 7th. And as you know, I don't believe the killing of Charlie Kirk was a false flag. I'm unconvinced that it's some type of operation. But like false flags, like these other manufactured crises, whether they're organic or manufactured, what it has in common is that cynical people very quickly move in to take advantage and push an agenda. And what I saw on Sunday is that. That was on full display. Whatever you think about the tragedy that took place 2 weeks ago, just under 2 weeks ago, whatever you think about the killing of Charlie Kirk and who was responsible, people are taking advantage. And I think that there is no other way to say it, no other way to describe what took place on Sunday other than that. And I don't like it. I don't like who is taking advantage of it, and I don't like what they intend to do with it. And I'll talk about that in great detail tonight. Like I said, trying to be respectful. But I'm also going to be a little audacious and bold. I think you have to be. I think that, and like I said, the reason I prefaced it that way is because throughout my entire life, and I think all of us have experienced this on our journey, our red-pilling journey, our ideological journey, we see this crop up over and over. A tragedy, a catastrophe, a terror attack, whatever you want to say. And it's in those extraordinary circumstances when certain things are not allowed to be criticized or questioned. Certain agendas are pushed very forcefully, and it's always weaponizing the feelings, the passions of the moment, the passions of the crowd. And so you want to be respectful, but it is politics, and we have to recognize that this is part and parcel of politics. We have to feel comfortable approaching those subjects like adults, and not get caught up in the moment. So anyway, so we'll talk all about the memorial tonight. Like I said, I'm sure you saw it, and they were pushing a very big agenda on Sunday. And we'll talk about precisely what that agenda is. If we have time, we're also going to talk tonight about this H1B visa scam. Get a load of this. Fell for it again and again and again. Yeesh. And it's so interesting. Last week we were going to cover this on the show. I didn't have a chance to because I think I was going to cover it on Thursday or Friday, but I just ran out of time. There was this big announcement in the Oval Office last week with President Trump and the Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, and they announced a new policy for the H1B visa program. So the H subcategory, that's temporary workers. You have H1B, H2A, H2B. It's a category of temporary workers. It's an immigration program. And this is a way to meet the labor demands of the American economy with immigration. H1B is a subcategory. It's for specialized labor. And it is basically the biggest scam in our immigration system. It's just this pipeline of cheap labor, originally perhaps well-intentioned, or maybe there was a kernel of a good idea there, but basically, from the beginning, it's just been abused to undercut American labor with cheap foreign labor. This is one of the most egregious immigration scams being run on the country. And there was a lot of concern when Trump got into office about what he would do with the program. Silicon Valley wants limitless H-1B visas. They want an unlimited number of these temporary visas to be given out to mostly Indians as well as other Asian migrant workers. And we thought that Trump would open up this cap on H-1Bs at the behest of Elon Musk, his biggest donor, as well as others in his orbit currently inside the administration. We were surprised, however, last week when Trump made an announcement that he was going in reverse. And he was not going to open up the cap and have unlimited H-1Bs, but on the contrary, he was going to impose a massive fee on H-1B visas. He was going to increase the fee for an H-1B visa from roughly $2,000 to $5,000 per visa to $100,000 per year. This is huge. Because if you understand the problem with H-1B, the problem is it makes foreign labor more competitive than native labor, American labor. Foreign labor is cheaper. They're willing to work for lower wages. They are dependent on their employer for their visa and for their residency inside the country. So there's all sorts of other things the employer can get away with. So if the government imposes a $100,000 per year fee, that makes it far more competitive to hire American labor. And so this is good for the American worker. That is what was announced last week. And I and many other people said this is amazing. I didn't get the opportunity to cover it in great detail, but on my show last week, very briefly, I said this is amazing. This is a great policy. And although I would prefer that they get rid of H-1B altogether, this is maybe the next best thing because it kind of remedies the economic problem with it, the economical problem with it. It makes American labor more economical. It makes it cheaper, more efficient. Well, before we even got a chance to cover this announcement, it turns out it's a lie. The whole thing is a lie. It's not a $100,000 per year fee. It's a one-time fee. They pay a one-time $100,000 fee, and then these companies get the workers for 6 years. And then they could get a green card after that. So you can effectively amortize that $100,000 over the life of the visa. So it's not going to make any kind of difference. Silicon Valley will happily pay a one-time $100,000 fee. But it gets better. Not only, and by the way, they just straight up lied. Howard Lutnick said like 5 times, it's annual. They pay it every year. And then we find out over the weekend, it's not annual. So they just lied. They just misrepresented what it was. But it gets better. They also come out when they release the details and say that this fee will not apply to current H1B visa holders. So there's tons of H1B visa holders in the country. They greenlight over 100,000 of these every year. And I don't have the numbers off the top of my head. It's in my notes here. But they greenlight over 100,000 H1B visas per year. There's many of them already in the country. What would be great about the policy is that they would have to be a part of the program to retain the existing immigrant labor pool. You would need to pony up and pay $100,000 per year. Well, it doesn't even apply to all the existing visa holders. And then after the weekend, they start announcing carve-outs. And they say that, well, it doesn't apply to doctors and maybe might not apply to other workers. So they just lied about what it was. This sucks. We want the H1B program to be scrapped. They say we're going to charge people money. Well, not nearly as much as they said, and we're not even charging the current visa holders. It happens every week, guys. Every week. Fell for it again. Like, you just can't trust anything that they say because they lie. They lie, they overpromise, they underdeliver. They promise you one thing, then they pull the rug out from under you. And I hope, at the minimum, this is a demonstration that I'm being objective, selfishly. Because when they announced the policy, I said, this is terrific. I've been critical of the administration, but this is a step in the right direction. Well, you just can't believe anything they say because, well, it was a lie. So we fell for it again. I normally don't fall for it, but this time I fell for it. They lied. 3 days later, we found out it's just not even real. So I don't know if we'll have time to go deep into it, but if we do, we'll cover that as well. Those will be our 2 big news stories for the night. Before we get into it, I want to remind you to smash the follow button on Rumble, smash the like button, leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think about the episode tonight.
Honestly, I don't know how you guys are feeling, but I'm kind of thinking that these H1 visas are a little bit of a scam. The administration blatantly lying to us about the numbers, like to tell Americans that the illegals are the issue and that they're the ones bringing them in. They say they're going to charge people. That's a lie. Go from $100K yearly to apparently it's only $100K one-time payment, replacing American labor over the next 6 to 7 years with illegal slave labor, essentially. Americans are not lazy. We just don't want to be replaced out with cheaper labor and be blasted by the government about how bad we are. Honestly. Hiring like 500K Indian workers for big tech? Make it out like we're not smart enough to learn how to do these types of things? I don't know about you folks, but this is just unacceptable. We need to stand up for our nation, and we need to stop letting people destroy it. Always remember, Christ is King. Anyways, that's my breakdown on it. I will be releasing more content around this. Hope you enjoyed. Stay informed, stay tuned, and as always, stay based.